So, hi everyone, welcome to the AtlanTec Festival 2021. We're back again for our 7th year and are running a packed event across 5 days with over 40 events and 60 plus speakers. I hope you've managed to join some of our previous sessions earlier this week, but if not, don't worry. I'll show you some slides at the end of the sessions we still have to go for the rest of the week. And you can follow us on Twitter at AtlanTecFest and use the hashtag AtlanTec. So we're all about what's of interest to our tech community of innovators and practitioners along Ireland's western seaboard, what we call the AtlanTec Gateway. These events are supported by the tech community to enable the sharing of expertise and knowledge. My name is Taryn Schuller, and I'm delighted to be as your event moderator today. I am a Scrum Master, and I'm currently working in a Limerick-based company called Neat Solutions, who are going through an exciting Agile journey alongside a lot of growth in the company. And I'm also a member on the ITAG's Digital Women's Forum Committee. I'll be tracking your questions today. So if you just want to jump to the next slide, there's a view of where to find the Q&A. It's to the bottom right of your WebEx screen. Just click on the ellipsis and you'll see the Q&A there. Before we get started, I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors who have contributed to this year's AtlanTec Festival to make it another great success. In a moment, we'll hear from Belinda Waldock, who will be talking about Agile leadership and teams. Are you doing Agile or are you being Agile? And what is the difference? Belinda is the founder of Being Agile and an associate with Guru Team Ireland, helping teams improve the agility and enhance their performance and well-being. She is also the founder of Software Cornwall, a not-for-profit that supports kids into tech careers and the growth of the tech community in Cornwall. As one of AtlanTec's initial kickoff sessions 2 weeks ago, Belinda collaborated with ITAG and Guru Team to teach secondary school students about being Agile for education. And that was introducing Agile practices for students to assist with planning, prioritizing, to get their study and revision done. And Belinda is also the author of the book, Being Agile in Business, which is to discover faster, smarter, leaner ways to work. This was shortlisted for the Practical Manager category at the Chartered Management Institute Book of the Year Awards. And I'll paste a link to Belinda's book in the chat a bit later on. So please keep those questions coming in on the Q&A function and use the chat function to answer any questions Belinda has for you as she goes through her chat. We'll use time at the end of the call to answer your Q&As. While I pass the ball over to Belinda, let's get warmed up in the chat. So can you tell us in the chat where you're joining in from today? So I see some chats coming in here, a lot of Galway, a lot of Limerick.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Joe and Nessa, I see you're there. Shane and Dee. Like a few familiar names, new names. That's brilliant. Hi, everyone. Oh, loads from Galway. I so wish I was there with you. I'm in sunny Cornwall, so down in the far southwest, and it's I miss coming to Galway, I've got to say, and Dublin, flying into Dublin. Hope to be back soon. That's brilliant. So from all over, which is great. It's
yeah. So it's over to you then, Belinda.
Right, brilliant, lovely. So what we've got, I think, as Taryn mentioned, we've got the Q&A section. So as we go through, if you want to put in any kind of questions or thoughts, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll do a bit of Q&A. We also will use chat a bit as well in the session, but I'll give you a prompt on that before we do that. So welcome everyone. This is my first time on WebEx as well, so if I look like I'm clicking about a bit, apologies, but I think I'm with it. So so lovely introduction, thank you. So as Taryn mentioned, I work with, I'm an associate with Guru Team, and I came over to Ireland a lot before lockdown to work with teams, and now really working quite a lot virtually with teams as well, which is really great. And really around kind of being agile, so being agile as a team. So today, I guess what I want to do is I want to kind of do three things. I want to help kind of look at our awareness as kind of agile leaders or just agile individuals generally. I want to kind of, I'm going to pick up on a couple of the key challenges that I see with teams quite often. So with each team I work with, this is kind of a common theme that I see. And then we'll finish with a bit of a game that you can take away, that you can take some of this forward with your teams in the offices and remotely together afterwards. So I hope that all makes sense. Why we're here, I guess, so this is one of my favourite slides. Hopefully everybody can see the deck and this little graphs of what I planned and what happened. And I think, you know, so relevant at the moment, but I think it's tough, you know, at the moment for us all because there's so much change and uncertainty. And you know, being agile, being able to be adaptive and manage that change is absolutely, you know, never been more relevant really. And as leaders or as members of teams, then you know, it's even more important if we're the people that are kind of leading that forward. So in terms of the title and Agile Leadership, being agile and doing agile, what I kind of mean by that is this kind of difference between the methodology and the processes and the practices and the tools that we've got that we use within our teams, which are really, you know, effective and good at kind of recording our time and our work and things like that. So Jira or Trello or whichever tools you might use. And for those of you who are in dev, so I work with technical and non-technical teams, I should add. So you know, there's lots of agile practices and tools that we use within dev, but also more broadly. But when we think about being agile, it's more that kind of behavior and attitude that we've got towards what's happening with our teams, with our projects, with our organizations. So it's more about that kind of attitude that we take and the values and the beliefs that we hold and how that kind of informs our mindset and our culture. So I work with lots of teams that are doing agile really well, but they really want to kind of enhance that and take that step forward into kind of being more agile. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a kind of quiz in that sense, or a little game. I've played this quite a few times at big conferences where I've got lots of people in the room and I kind of do a stand-up, sit-down thing, which won't obviously work online. But what I'd like you to do is I'm going to present you with a list of things. And I just want you to have a think about those things as I kind of go through them and see if you kind of recognize them. So maybe you recognize them in yourself or your team or organization that you work in at the moment, or even organizations that you've worked with previously. So I'm not going to ask you to respond at this point, but just thinking to yourself, you know, yeah, this is something I recognize, or no, it's not. So I'll read through the list and just, as I say, to yourself, just think, do I do this or no? So do you delay delivery until things are completely ready? Do you insist on perfection? So can you be a bit of a kind of, I really want to make it perfect? Do you find yourself haggling over precise wording sometimes when you're talking to people? Do you ever insist on everything being written down? So absolutely things have to be written down before we can take them forward. Something I got to say I am incredibly guilty of is prioritizing unimportant tasks. I'm really easily distracted by shiny things. So if I was answering this, that would definitely be a yes on my list. Insisting on doing everything through the channels, so whether that's kind of following particular policy or procedure, but making sure that we're insisting on doing everything through the right channels. Referring matters for further study and consideration. So if somebody's got a great idea that, you know, tend to go forward for further study, further consideration, planning, that sort of thing. And teams that are really big teams, large as possible, so always over 5 people. So I'm conscious I can't really see many faces, so if anybody does want to turn on their video, then do feel free. But I'm hopeful that you're all kind of sat there deliberating and thinking about this list. So I don't know if anybody kind of might know where I might have found this list from, or anybody come across it before. What I'll do, actually, I will keep chat open just in case anybody wants to kind of add into the conversation. But yeah, you might be surprised where I came across it. I came across it quite a long time ago, and it really got me thinking. It was something that really helped me when I was kind of becoming a leader to just raise my awareness. So at this point, if I'm doing it online in a conference, pretty much everybody stood up because somebody is, everybody kind of has got one of these things on their list. So it might surprise you to find out that this is from a simple sabotage field manual. So this is a field manual that I discovered, gosh, it's probably coming up like 8-10 years ago now, when it was declassified by the CIA. And basically it's a manual that they put together to help basically people that were trying to help the Allies, and they might be working in an area where it's controlled by the enemy. And this is basically a guide to help you to sabotage productivity in the workplace, but without getting caught. So these are like these little tips and tricks throughout this that they go through, and they're like, these are things that you can do to actually sabotage productivity without getting caught, without it being kind of called out. And if it is called out, that you can kind of, kind of shake it off. So if you, if you search for this sabotage field manual online, you will find it. And it's quite an amusing read. The kind of more business section is towards the end. And you can see like people make speeches, insist on doing everything through channels. So the point of this really is just to kind of get us thinking about, our own behaviors and things that we do sometimes. And certainly in some instances, we do need to make sure that these things happen. If we're working in medical healthcare, e-health, for example, then things do have to work. It is important. But it's, in a lot of cases, some of this can be over the top in terms of how we need to kind of manage and lead our teams. Excuse me. So hopefully that's got you all thinking a little bit. I came across a metaphor as well. And I had a sudden realization actually a couple of evenings ago that I just suddenly remembered that they're not called roundabouts in Ireland. You don't call them roundabouts, you call them traffic circles, I think. I even had the thought of, yes, there are definitely roundabouts in Ireland, because in the USA they don't generally have roundabouts. So I just double check everybody knew. So if this is a nice metaphor that was shared in a slightly different context, but I thought it worked really nicely in leadership as well. And it's this idea of whether you're a kind of traffic light kind of person or a roundabout kind of person. So if we think about, so yeah, thank you, roundabouts are, oh yeah, roundabouts as well. So rotaries, oh, okay, I just learned something new. Thank you, Ray. So the idea of this is just thinking about the kind of nature of traffic lights and roundabouts. So like traffic, if we take traffic lights, they're actually quite a command and control, like you'll do as you're told. So when it's red, you stop, when it's green, you go. And it's very much, if you imagine the traffic lights are, your piece of work, the tool that you're going to use to navigate this piece of work, e.g. a junction, and the cars are your team, is how are you actually helping them to manage that piece of work? How are you manage to get through that? So is it a kind of more traffic light approach? I'm going to tell them what to do when, and a highly controlled situation. Or is it more of a kind of roundabout situation? So actually what we've done there is we've kind of given drivers a set of kind of rules and guidelines about how to navigate that roundabout, and then really pretty much trusted them to be able to navigate it themselves without bumping into each other. Yeah, so we can kind of think about agile leadership being more of this kind of roundabout metaphor, where actually we're giving our tools, we're giving our teams the tools and the support and the environment that they need to actually kind of get the job done without having to overly control them. So I hope that kind of metaphor makes sense. If we think about it in a kind of slightly more kind of detail, is I tend to kind of go, okay, so that kind of theory X. So if you're not familiar with the kind of theory X, theory Y, so that kind of traffic light, again, that kind of mentality, that attitude would be, you know, people need to be told what to do. People won't do it unless they're told, and we need to command and control the situation. It needs to be micromanaged. We'll direct them. You know, the highest paid, most important person in the room, their opinion is what matters. Versus the kind of roundabout, which is more the theory why. Everybody's doing the best that they can with the tools and the environment and the resources that they've got available to them. And really, as that leader, I'm here to kind of serve them and make sure that they've got the tools and the environment and the resources that they need to get the job done. So I'm much more of this kind of facilitator role. I'm mentoring, I'm coaching, I'm sharing my knowledge and skills, or I'm helping the team to work it out for themselves. And we're very much led by value, you know, value for the customer, value for the stakeholders, rather than that kind of steering group type model. And the difference in these two is quite amazing, really, in that sense of, you know, unfortunately, if we do take this kind of theory X command and control type approach, what we can do is we can put our teams into this kind of mindset of what we call learned helplessness, where actually they just sit back and wait to be told what to do. So there's no kind of feeling of being able to safe to challenge or safe to kind of do what they want to do. They've got to stop and they've got to wait. And then you start to see things like work to rule and not in my job description and things like that, because people are kind of, you've trained them by behaving in this kind of traffic light way. You've actually trained them to do that and they won't do anything else. Whereas in this kind of more roundabout, we're actually really encouraging people to take that power themselves and enabling them so that they can be self-managing, self-organizing. And then we're really there as leaders to help them to do the best job that they can. So again, I kind of hope that makes sense. And if we kind of compare, you know, if we go back and compare that list that we were looking at, and then we take a look at some of the Agile principles. So let's go right back to the kind of core manifesto and principles of Agile, is I've just picked out a few of those principles that are really relevant around leadership and really kind of add to that. So, you know, this emphasis on working collaboratively, working together rather than individuals, getting that environment and that support needed, and then really trusting the team to get the job done, you know. So and then having conversations. So some of the stuff that we'll look at kind of next around conversation is key to effective communication, how working solutions are the primary measure of progress, creating a sustainable pace to maximize the performance. So we'll pick up on a couple of challenges there that around the team. So that's one of the key challenges that are faced. But really recognizing that the best solutions emerge from if we can make our team self-organizing, they're more efficient, more productive, and their improvement of well-being as well. So they're happy teams as well as productive teams, which is hopefully what we all want. And yeah, absolutely, the psychological safety there is really important. So and finally, and what we'll finish with after the next section is this looking at, are we really regularly reflecting and tuning our teams and helping our teams to make sure that they're in the best environment, that they've got the best support and resources available to them, you know, based on budgets and timescales and things, obviously. So just that piece really around kind of agile mindset, or are we, you know, are we really acting and behaving in the best way that actually allows our teams to be agile, and are we being agile ourselves as leaders in terms of how we're acting and how we're working with our teams. So again, any kind of thoughts on that and any questions we'll pick up on at the end, so feel free to type those into the Q&A, or I think Taryn's keeping an eye on both the chat and the Q&A as well. So prioritization, tongue twister, and estimation is probably one of the key things in terms of when I work with teams, so all types of different sorts of teams. So this is from kind of big tech organizations, teams working within big tech organizations, through to completely non-tech teams. So I'm doing some work with Durham Cathedral at the moment, for example, around you know, so that's a very different, no technology involved at all there. But you know, it's a common theme that I see around teams finding that prioritizing, estimating and planning is a real challenge for them and their team. So I want to play a little game. I'm going to give you, we're going to play an estimation game, which we'll use chat for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you something to estimate. And then what I'd like you to do is kind of type the number into chat, but don't press go for a second. I'll just give everybody kind of 10 seconds to put their numbers in, if you like. And then I'll say go and we'll all go at the same time. And then I'll ask a couple of questions again afterwards. And then just again, if you want to use chat to feedback, that's great. It's a really kind of simple task. What I'd like you to do is estimate in minutes how long to make a cup of tea. So if we were estimating a task as a team, imagine we're a big team and we're going to estimate how long in minutes to make a cup of tea. So put your number into chat and then I'll give it a couple of seconds and then go for it. Cool. So so we've got some numbers coming through. So you guys should be able to see these as well. So great. Scroll back up. So we've got a 5, an 8, a 4, 10 minutes, 3 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 4, 5, 6, 1.5, 3, 4, 8, 4, 4, 6, 4. Gosh, there's loads of us. Brilliant. 3, 7, 4s and 3s, more 5, 3, 3, 3, 7. God, quite diverse. 4 and 2, 3. So I think the lowest there was 1.5, and I think the highest was 10. Nice comment, Sean. You get a bit of a gold star for that, actually. I'll give you a gold star for that one. I'll come back to why in a minute. So actually, while if those of you kind of estimated 1.5 or 2, can you, and those of you who estimate quite high as well, any of you would like to just kind of give a quick overview of, you know, your 1.5 minutes or your 10 minutes, what's involved, what did you do? Just give me a quick or give us a quick overview of what you did, or even if it was a 5 or 7. Just a couple of people, just strong T, yeah, excellent. Malarkey, yeah, assumptions, again, another gold star for you. It was 6 minutes, so plenty of brewing time on that one by the sounds of it. So had to run to the shop, saying brilliant, Sean. So was that 10 minutes then? I'm guessing that was one of the higher estimates that you had because you had an extra task. 30 minutes. Brilliant. Boil kettle, put the tea bag in, add hot water, enjoy. Pub on the way. They're open again over here. I don't know how it stands over there with you at the moment, but they've just opened back up over here. 10 minutes. Fill the kettle, boil the kettle, get the tea from the press, do the pot, put tea in the pot, add the water. I was using a pot as well, so that takes a bit. Brilliant. Get a cup of tea, pour tea, add milk. Fabulous. So I think so. First observation is actually we're quite diverse with that, with those estimates. So 1.5 minutes through to 10, without interruptions. Nice point. Yeah, 5 minutes. So we've got quite, if I mean 1.5, 10 minutes is not a massive difference, is it? But if I scale that up and say days or weeks, you know, is that task going to take 1.5 days or is it going to take 10 days? That's quite a difference, isn't it? Or even hours, you know, that's quite a difference. So we're quite diverse with our estimations there. So I've got a couple more questions for you. So again, feel free to answer in chat, just so we've got a bit of a conversation going. This, when I do this in my courses, and usually this we kind of open up conversation now, which is really good fun, but we'll use chat today because there's lots of us. What I'd like you to do is just tell me, where were you? So when you took yourself off and I asked you to estimate making a cup of tea, you'll have gone somewhere and you know your brain will have kind of gone, what's the best experience to inform me of this, you know, what previous experience have I got that will give me an idea of how long this task is going to take. So just think about where you, so was it for me, so answer me or someone else, I suppose are the two options there, or you can give a different one. So let's just see who people who people made it for. Me. Sorry, I've done those questions slightly out of order, haven't I? Yeah, me. It's, I've got to say, it's always the same answers. I've run this kind of game a number of times before, and it always has the same. And where were you? Were you at home or were you at the office? This is a slightly off question now because lots of us are at home. So, but were you at home in the office? Yeah, everybody's at home. And just finally, what did you make? So did you make tea or did you make something else? Maybe you made coffee or hot chocolate or something like that. So let's say tea, green tea. I'll allow that. Okay, tea, excellent tea with milk. Cool, tea. Oh, you're a good lot. There you go. Anybody? That's lemon ginger tea. That's still tea. I'll let that count. It's tea. So usually you're all very good, I've got to say, at Marmite. Oh, okay. But usually there's yeah, Nessa. So Nessa's played the game before, so she knows. She's got a bit of an inside track on this. So most of the time, you're all very good, I've got to say, but generally there's always somebody that either makes coffee or they make hot chocolate. So in that instance, what I usually do is kind of say, okay, well, just remember that, you know, I asked you to make a cup of tea or estimate making a cup of tea. You've estimated making a cup of coffee. So maybe I asked you for a website and you've built me an app, you know, so actually you've not really, you know, you've kind of gone off scope based on your own assumptions, and people are picking up this, you know, what are your assumptions? Pretty much we all default to our, you know, I'm making a cup of tea for me, I'm at home, we've gone back to our kind of most common experience perhaps of making tea. By the sounds of it, apart from sorry, I've lost track of the name, everybody kind of assumed that we had tea bags, we had milk, we had sugar, we had a kettle that we could boil, we had access to fresh water. We've made all these assumptions about, you know, the tools and the resources and the environment that we've got around us. So really, this is really just to kind of point out how diverse that we can be when it comes to just estimating something as simple as a cup of tea. So when it comes to our kind of accuracy of estimation, when we're doing our tasks, whatever work that might be, you know, if we can be so diverse when we're down here, so on this is kind of just a simplified process complexity type graph. If you think about this axis as the what and this as the how, so when we're close to agreement on what we're doing and how we're going to do it, and we're certain about how we're going to do it, things are quite simple and we can predict them and we can get a kind of quite accurate estimation. But, you know, we all know how and what a cup of tea is, but we're still massively diverse in our estimation. So if you think about how that impacts as we get, you know, a lot of you guys, tech teams, you're working constantly in this kind of complex environment where it's not entirely clear what we're doing or how we're going to do it, or maybe we know what we're doing, but we don't know how we're going to do it. Estimation becomes really difficult and challenging. So we need to be kind of mindful of that and again aware of that when it comes to it. And this is where this kind of conversation is really critical to actually open up that discussion, even as simply on a chat discussion. When I run this with teams, when I run this with teams, I always time it so it's just before the break. So what I kind of then say is I kind of go, I can't remember the names again, but if I flip through, so, you know, okay, so if we were going to have a break now, you know, D, you've got 4 minutes, Patrick, you've got 10 minutes, Oliver, you've got 3 minutes, Michael, you've got 10 minutes, you know, so it just, again, makes you think. And often people go off, make their cup of tea and come back and go, it did take longer than 3 minutes, or I forgot about this. So, you know, that actual kind of practice is really interesting. So something that you can play with your teams, and just kind of as a bit of an icebreaker come to in kind of prioritize an estimation, just to get us, help us get a bit more of a shared kind of view and get those conversations started. So I think often teams feel like prioritizing estimating is a challenge, and it is, absolutely. But I think the other thing that really comes through when I'm working with teams is workflow management, and how Agile is often kind of taken as an approach where we're really fixing our work for 2 or 3 weeks, and we're doing that work and then we're planning our next batch of work. But again, the majority of teams that I work with can't do that because they have a degree, they have that mix of, you know, their planned, scheduled day-to-day work, but then they also have ad hoc stuff coming in at them. So whether it's urgent, important requests or new items going on the backlog, or conversations or side projects they're working on, or stuff that you know, they're improvising because, you know, we're up here in chaos, you know, we're up here, something's happened, and so we're having to respond to that quickly. So actually this kind of planning our whole sprint doesn't really work, and we need to kind of give ourselves, you know, some slack and some capacity for the different aspects of our work that we do. So Agile can be really powerful for helping us to kind of visualize that and get a better view of, you know, how much work is planned, how much work is unplanned, and we can start to estimate how much unplanned work we might get, and then actually be able to build in slack for that and actually use. So again, coming back to that kind of being agile and doing agile, you know, we might be doing agile in terms of planning our sprints, but are we actually kind of reflecting on those and working out, well, actually we've got a bigger, you know, we've got too much ad hoc work on at the moment, we need to manage that, or we've got this big project coming up. So are we actually kind of building that back in, and making sure that we are building this kind of sustainable pace for our teams? So, you know, our boards and our tools can really help us to visualize that kind of reality of what is actually happening, the real-time picture. And what I find is actually teams operate they operate better around a capacity of, you know, planning kind of 60, 70, 80% of their week, and allowing that kind of 20, 30% slack for that ad hoc work, for that learning improvement, for that rework, for those other areas. Because otherwise, you know, I used to say we're not Mary Poppins bags as teams. You know, you can't just keep throwing stuff at us and expecting it to disappear into the bag. So, you know, that impact actually of overburdening teams. I've met team leaders that will always over plan a sprint. So they'll always over plan their sprint. So this is how much work I think they can get, the team can get done. I'll give them an extra bit as well to make sure that they're 100% productive. What you're doing is you're actually putting your team into perpetual failure. So they can never win. Every sprint, they can't get the work done. So that becomes, you know, actually quite a hit on morale. So it's much better, in my view, to plan for that extra capacity and actually allow the team then to do extra if they do get all the work done. So we're still performing, but we're doing it in a kind of pull way rather than a push way. And that really helps to, you know, if we've always got stuff left over at a sprint and we're having to replan that and reprioritize it, and, you know, that adds complexity to the planning. We need to build that slack, and we also need what I always encourage teams to have is a bit of an inbox, a bit of a control point, where we can really look at that inbound work and decide whether we do need to drop everything and do it, or whether it can wait. And also then, you know, if that slack isn't used, you know, that gives the team time for opportunity to review, to reflect, to improve, to upskill, to do lots of different things in terms of using their time productively to actually improve the team performance, rather than just always just firefighting in terms of the day-to-day and getting the work done. So that kind of slack and inbox that I mentioned there. So, you know, here, this is the canvas that I use with teams when I'm introducing Agile. So you've got your kind of backlog on the left-hand side and your sprint on the right. So here, you know, we've got some plan work. We've started our sprint. We're doing our Agile training today. But during our sprint, we've got these kind of 2 ad hoc requests come in. We can now, you know, using the inbox, we can make a bit of a decision, whether that's at our daily stand-up or whenever that might be, is to actually say, okay, so where, you know, is this task important and urgent? If it is, we've got some slack here within our sprint to actually take that work on. If we didn't, we'd have to go, hey guys, we're not a Mary Poppins bag. If, you know, you want to bring that in, then we're going to have to stop doing something. So we can start to make sure we're getting that balance. But if we built ourselves some slack, we can actually bring that in and say, this one, okay, this isn't urgent, this isn't important, so this will go into our backlog and we'll think about that next sprint. So it just gives us a control point, because what I do see is a lot of teams where, you know, things come in and they just get added to they get added and then they get bumped, and then this stuff never gets done because, you know, we're too busy dealing with the ad hoc requests, which are a massive disruption and interruption as well. So we can really kind of use, you know, the board to raise our awareness and give us a bit more kind of visibility, and really kind of give us an idea of, you know, how we can plan our sprints better, and how we can kind of build in those additional things that we need to do to change and improve, and those ad hoc projects. So, you know, most teams I work with tend to have, you know, a mix of projects or a mix of things that they're working on. They're not just working on one project or one product development. They're actually doing a mix of roles or a mix of things. So it can be a really kind of useful way to really make sure that we've got that mix right. Just in time commitment. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it as well. So how are we doing time-wise? Not too bad. So the last thing I wanted to share with you, because hopefully this is, you know, got you thinking about some things, got you thinking about, you know, how can we implement this within the team, or actually how can I take this back to the team? Again, another thing that I see teams doing but not doing particularly well is regular retrospectives. And when I say not doing them well, is because what often they're doing is they're doing the reflection piece, but they're not doing the learning or the actionable improvements taking away. So they are kind of reviewing what's going well and where it could be better, but they're not really implementing stuff to improve that what's going well, or mitigate against the things that they're finding challenging. So again, this is a bit of a kind of doing agile, being agile thing. So this is a slide from a talk Heading Create Hacks. It's a company I worked with years ago, and we basically used agile to visualize what was happening within the organization. They're basically like a design and produce toys. So each one of these post-it notes represents a toy. This is a design department, and I introduced Agile to them, and then I came back a few weeks later and I was like, how's it going? And the design team leader kind of, oh, it's absolutely brilliant, you know, the board's looking fabulous, you know, come and have a look. The only thing is we need a bigger waiting box. And I kind of went, oh, okay, like, let's see, you know. So and this is not an understatement, this kind of animated slide, because this was really what was happening. Basically, they had their backlog of work, they had stuff they wanted to do, stuff they were doing, nothing had got done, everything had ended up in waiting and pause. And their response was a bit of a doing agile response, in my view, in that, like, we need a bigger waiting box. Whereas actually the being agile response would be, well, why is everything getting stuck in waiting? What is our board showing us that we can now actually respond to and kind of say, okay, why is this happening? What's going wrong here? And how can we do it better next time? So that kind of subtle difference between, you know, okay, we're using the tool, but are we actually listening to what the tool's telling us and responding to that? And so I play a game with teams. This is that I wanted to share with you. This is basically called retrospective sailing. You might have come across a couple of versions of it. So this is my kind of style version of it. This is a boat from a conference I did a couple of years ago. So we had a workshop at the conference where we basically used our boats to do a retrospective on the conference itself. So again, I think, you know, retrospectives are great in terms of reviewing our agile process, but actually retrospectives are great for improving lots of things across the team and across the organization, using with different stakeholders. Again, you know, agile tools are great, and it's about working out where we can use them to give us that kind of knowledge and feedback that we need to be able to make things better. So the way the boat works is, what you do is, if you're all in person, get a big sheet of paper and literally draw a boat. If you're not, I've got a template, and you can do it on Google Slides or Jamboard, or you could do it as I kind of often facilitate it through a slide. And so you draw your boat. On our boat is our mission. So in this sense, we've got the Sunshine Ship, and their mission at the conference was to learn, to network, to share my crazy ideas with people, to meet others in the industry, to level up, to get out the office, and it's sharing learnings back at HQ. I think that one is as well. So we've got our mission for our boat, what we're actually kind of reflecting on, and why, what we wanted to achieve. And then we've got our sales. So what we do is we add our sales, what's going well. So here we've got our refreshments, a good amount of people, the format of the workshops, the aircon. Do you like what they've done there? What's putting wind in our sails? The aircon. Friendly people, practical sessions. And you can see that we've also scaled these sales. So what we've done is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big is this sale? So practical sessions, massive sale, taking us forward. Slack channel, just a 2 out of 10, so a smaller, nice sale, but not a massive main sale for our boat. And then what we've got down the bottom here is we've got what could be better, what are our challenges, so what are the anchors, what's holding our boat back. And again, so we've identified these and we've scaled those on a -1 to -10. Sorry, that's -10 to 10. That should be 1 to 10. So on a scale, so a -1 is a minor impediment, you know, so not enough cake, not enough chocolate cake is a -1 on this boat. And it was really good cake, I've got to say. Then we've got kind of bigger anchors, which is too much choice of good talks and workshops, you know, -7, too many sessions. So that's a slightly bigger anchor for people at the conference. They can't choose. So this is really great because we can get our team to map out what's putting the wind in their sails, what are the anchors holding them back, and then get a gauge of how big those sails are and how big those anchors are. And the scaling is really the key, because the yellow post-it notes then are a +1 improvement. So these are small actionable things that we can take away, that we could do, say, in our next sprint, that don't look to raise that -7 to a +7, but just aim to turn that -7 into a -6. What could we do that's small, that's actionable, to just raise that anchor a notch? And indeed, what could we do to enhance these sales? What could we do more to make our refreshments even better, to improve the variety of our talks even better, to perhaps engage more on Slack so that we can turn that 2 into a 3? So these are really key takeaways then that we can take from our boat, and we can put them into our backlog as tasks in our Slack for that improvements and change, that if we get a chance within our sprint, that we can get those, we can start working on those tasks. So hopefully that makes sense as a game. And I really do encourage you to, you know, just use the metaphor, if not, you know, drawing the boat. Actually using that metaphor is really powerful and a nice way to create a kind of safe to challenge environment. So where people feel quite safe to kind of say, actually, this isn't, you know, this could be better, because what we're doing is we're reflecting with the benefit of hindsight. So we're not saying, what did we mess up? What did we get wrong? Whose fault was it? We're saying, actually, with the benefit of hindsight, you know, what could have gone better next time? What are some of the challenges that we're facing that potentially collectively we could work on together? So when I do this with teams, you know, I have a slide that I use, so we can add our mission, and then we add our sales, and we can add our +1 improvements. So there's, you know, we can scale those. So prioritize and estimation, like I say, often comes up on boards. Ad hoc requests always comes up on boards. Technical issues often are those challenges as well. But again, you know, the team, the collaboration, the flexibility of remote working. So, you know, some things can be sales, you know, where it's brilliant being flexible, being able to work from home and work, you know, work the hours that I want to. But also it can be a bit of an anchor, because the comms and the collaboration has broken down a little bit because we're all distributed. So we can really use this to kind of look at our own teams, whether it's our agile processes or whether it's actually more broadly things within the team. And then remembering, you know, these +1 improvements, we want to take these improvements forward. So these improvements will land in our inbox, and we'll make a decision on, okay, you know, is this something that we want to action, you know, this sprint, and it's something small that and actionable that we could get done this sprint and make a difference? Or is this something that actually, you know, it's not so urgent, not so important, so let's put it in the backlog, and we can look at how we can build that in with our other mix of work when we're planning our next sprint. So I think this is that kind of key part, really, is what I don't see is teams taking those improvements forward in small actionable ways. And actually doing this can have a really big impact quite quickly and really help to do things like create a bit of slack. So, you know, where the team is working at 110% and they just don't have time for this stuff, is actually looking for those small wins that we can just raise those things up a little notch and just create a little bit of slack for the team that then enables them to start to build on that. So, you know, eventually they go from 110% planned to kind of 70% planned and 30% unplanned slack and ad hoc time for them. So I'm conscious of time. I've talked a bit more than I wanted to. So this is my last slide. So really, I just wanted to flash this up as well, so that this kind of new routines and behaviors, because I think often when I work with teams, especially leadership teams, this is quite challenging stuff and it can be quite uncomfortable and quite new. So just raising your awareness. So, you know, when you can catch yourself, you know, getting distracted by shiny, unimportant tasks, that actually you've got a new level of awareness. You've become conscious of that. So, you know, it'll just take a bit of time to kind of make that a habit. So, you know, we're all pretty used to waving at the end of Zoom calls. I was waving as you all came in because it's just default to wave when I see a face now. But yeah, you know, take this on board and take this kind of agile approach to agile. So there'll be, you know, something I hope in this talk that you can kind of take away. And perhaps you'd like to share that on chat in a second when we open up for questions. That, you know, what's that one little key takeaway from this talk that you could actually take forward, put into your sprint, and be able to action over the next couple of weeks to get that momentum. So take an agile approach to being agile is my point, really. Lots of small, think big, act small in that sense. So and yeah, just on that quick close, I see Nessa's popped up on video as well, so she waving that as I say, I do sessions with teams through Guru. So if you want to have a conversation, they tend to be quite custom, so from kind of out the box type introductions and sessions to really kind of what's working really nicely at the moment is this kind of refresh and reflect sessions, really made to measure for your team. So get in touch with Nessa if you want to chat more. And indeed, if there's any templates or any of these slides that you quite like, then give me a shout and I'm happy to send over like the canvas or the boat template for you so you can use it. And my contact details are here as well, so you can find my book and you find me on Twitter and different places. So, and I will stop there so that we have got a few minutes for Q&A. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Do let me know on chat. I'll open up the chat again, and we'll open up the Q&A as well. So that's brilliant. So yeah, oh great. I'm glad you enjoyed it.